this week we're going to try something a little different. It's going to be the best of the WRAL Daily Download. Some of our favorite shows, some of your favorite shows, we're replaying them. So listen again, or if you missed them the first time, check them out. Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Amanda Lamb. In today's deep dive conversation with WRAL's hidden history reporter, Heather Leah, we're going to talk about some of the iconic places that have defined Raleigh that are going away due to new development in the city of Oaks. Welcome to the program, Heather. Thanks for being here. I always enjoy speaking to you about the history of our area. I've been in Raleigh since 1994, so when I read your article online, so many of these vanishing iconic places have meanings to me, so I can only imagine what it's like for people who grew up here. So you grew up here. What is it like to see all these changes so quickly?
It's surreal. So I'm a fifth generation Raleighite, which means I grew up here. My mom grew up here. My grandma lived here for 92 years. She grew up here, and so on with my great grandparents and before that. So my family has seen a lot of changes, and I'll say change is good. Growth is good. I love seeing Raleigh flourish. I love how many people want to live in Raleigh. But it is hard to see some of these cultural icons that really give a sense of place to Raleigh go away.
Absolutely. And I know, I'm not going to lie, one of my favorite places to eat is Char Grill in Raleigh. It's my guilty pleasure. There's a bunch of them, but the one that's the most famous, if you will, is the one on Hillsborough Street. It's been there for more than 60 years. Tell me about what's happening to that site and promise me it's not going away for good.
So the good news is it's not going away for good, and it's actually not gone yet. But what has happened is new development has been proposed and agreed upon that they're going to start building there. I believe they're going to build up to 20 stories in that spot. The Char Grill will eventually be gone while they do the building, and then it will come back and still be in that structure or in that development. So you'll still be able to have those classic flavors, and I'm sure they'll do their best to make the inside really feel like the old Char Grill. I do know that the sign, Hillsborough Street used to be completely full of these signs, and sign ordinance have changed that through the years. They are going to keep that Char Grill sign. They've said they're going to put it inside the new Char Grill. So it will still be there, and there are other Char Grills. So the flavors aren't going to be gone. It's more that iconic, classic first
right,
location.
Like the old-fashioned drive-in is what it really represents. And that sign, like you said, just, when you see that, you just think of, years gone by and people coming to get a shake and a burger and fries. So another one of my favorite places in Raleigh that is changing hands is the Rialto Theater on Glenwood Avenue. Classic theater, shows a lot of independent films. I actually had my first date there with my now husband. And it is for sale, correct? So what do the current owners hope is going to happen when it changes hands?
So the Rialto, again, another theater that has actually been a classic spot for longer than it was the Rialto, because before that it was the Colony.
That's right.
And before that, I believe it was a grocery store. So that building has been there for a while, and the building isn't getting torn down. Some of the places we're going to talk about today are being demolished. The Rialto building will still be there, but the place itself, the soul of what's been there for the past few decades, that's sort of what's changing. Though I will say the owner does hope that whoever buys it will hopefully continue to show independent films and really keep the spirit of the Rialto going. But, we can't really know for sure. And Rocky Horror Picture Show was also just a classic experience for, Raleigh youth and Raleigh young at heart. And, of course, that will not be happening for a while as well. Will it come back with the new owners? We don't know. I guess we'll just have to see.
One of the things I love about the Rialto is when you are in that lobby, they have the pictures of theaters from years past. I think the Rialto was there for maybe 3 decades. So theaters prior to that. And, you see the old-fashioned cars and people dressed up to go to the movies. And and just, what it was probably like back in the day. So yes, let's fingers crossed that it stays a theater because it's a really lovely venue. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that has defined the Raleigh skyline, the Round Holiday Inn, built in 1969, and I learned from your reporting that it was only the second round building ever to be built in Raleigh, and it has some amazing views. But that building is actually going away, correct?
Yes. So this one is breaking the hearts of a lot of people because, first of all, and honestly, some people are happy about it. I'll say both sides. I'm sad that it's going to be gone. Some people never thought that it was a very attractive building, and they're happy to see it go. I do know that it's supposed to get replaced with a glass tower of sorts, which, as far as my research has shown, will have hotel space and probably some luxury apartments as well. Mixed-use development. I believe there's going to be maybe some restaurants and things. But the Holiday Inn has, first of all, it's got a whole urban legend around it that if you have lived here long enough, you've heard people say that it used to spin. And so, and it's because there were other buildings when that was built that looked like that did spin. But
so the top part would spin,
right,
like the bar, the restaurant.
Right.
Okay.
And so there's this whole debate of did it ever spin? And there are people in Raleigh who will swear to you that it definitely did used to spin, but now it's broken.
But there's no indication of that.
It didn't actually spin.
Okay.
But it does have some of the best views in Raleigh.
It does, yeah.
You can go up there and it's a 360-degree window and you can just walk around and see, beautiful views. It's like a bird's eye view of Raleigh. I've used it to give historic tours where we'll stand up there and I'll point out
to
all
different
the historic
locations.
Buildings.
Wow.
So I really hope, and I have no indication that this will happen, but what I would like to not lose is that view.
Right.
So I'm really hoping that whoever builds there next keeps that top space open, like a public space.
Sure,
right?
As
like
a restaurant
a
or a bar or something where people could still continue to enjoy that.
Yes, it's a shame to lose the building. I think losing the view would be, to me, an even bigger shame.
Absolutely. Well, we are going to take a quick break. And when we come back with Heather Leah, we're going to be talking about some iconic Raleigh hotspots that are swapping their historic properties for more modern locations. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm talking with Heather Leah about the future of some of Raleigh's most well-known spots that are making some big changes. Okay, so here's another one. Very near and dear to my heart, Charlie Goodnight's, the comedy club on Morgan Street. It started in 1983. I have so many memories there. It was also a nightclub, and I have memories there as a young woman living in Raleigh. And now it's gone. It's moved to the Village District. I know it's in kind of a temporary space right now. Fun fact, I actually did a comedy class there and did a little stand-up class and did a little stand-up there
You'll have
for
to
a showcase.
Show us that.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll negotiate about that. But I did that at the current location, which is K&W, the old K&W cafeteria. So tell me what's next for the club.
So, yeah, the building that it was in, the history of Charlie Goodnight's, first of all, as you said, it's like the soul of comedy in Raleigh. And it's a place where up-and-coming comedians would get their start, like you, apparently.
You'll know. Who knows? Possibly, yeah.
But also it's a place where legends would come perform. Robin Williams has performed there. That alone makes me think the building should stay.
Yeah.
But of course, Charlie Goodnight's has been demolished, unfortunately, or the building that it was in.
And it was very quick.
It was very quick.
I walk in that area sometimes, and I couldn't believe how quickly it came down.
I blinked and it was gone. And the other thing is that building was from the 1930s, and it used to be an ice cream, a building where they had ice cream, and White's Ice Cream, I believe is what it was called. And so this building, and it's an Art Deco style 1930s building. I had never really thought about it driving by it because I just knew that's Charlie Goodnight's, but it's got a whole story behind it. There's a whole ghost story behind it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Especially with being that old and having all these comedians there telling stories, the legends just really started to spin up. In fact, I used to take a haunted tour back to that building.
Okay.
So, it's a building that had so much history in the structure itself. And then on top of that, you have Charlie Goodnight's moving out of its iconic spot.
Right. So a high rise is going in there, with which, again, I'm sure we'll learn more about later, but I think apartments and retail and things like that. And then they are moving to a different location in the Village District that they are working on right now.
Yes.
A kind of an underground area is my understanding.
I hadn't actually heard that. I'm
so-
interested to learn about
Yeah,
that.
so I don't know all the details. I've read a little bit about it, but they are currently in the old K&W until that renovation is complete.
Which there's another loss, the K&W.
Yeah, that's another one.
But you can still see comedy, yes. Charlie Goodnight's will
There you
still
go.
around.
They're not going out of business. That's
Correct,
good news.
yes.
So the Fallout Shelter was a famous bar on West Street, kind of an underground punk bar, if you will, in the 80s and 90s. Then it became Flex, serving the LGBT community. In recent years, it's closed. So what's happening at that spot? And I understand Flex is going somewhere.
Yeah. So again, a lot of these places, we're losing the structure, but not necessarily the place, which is good, which is why the article is about things that have changed forever, not things that we've necessarily just completely lost, which is good. I'm glad that a lot of the places are staying around, but it is hard when you see them, if you've been here a long time, seeing them move from their iconic home that you have so many memories there. It's kind of like moving away from your childhood home.
Right. And I mean, the Fallout Shelter and Flex, they were in kind of an underground dark bar, with, just an atmosphere.
It was
had
an
atmosphere.
experience. It did. And the Fallout Shelter, I actually found out when I interviewed a DJ who used to do the industrial nights at the Fallout Shelter, really brought the industrial scene and industrial music to Raleigh. Now, I don't think that's a huge scene, but I happened to be part of it in my younger days.
So that was kind of cool for you to learn.
Yes.
So I understand Flex is going in a building over by the train tracks behind Y Hill, right there at the corner of Boylan and Hargett.
Yes, so Flex will still be around. I am interested to see if they'll be able to capture that same atmosphere.
Sure, in that building. So Cary Town Center, I raised my family in Cary, and we were right down the street from there. I can't tell you how many times I was in that food court or, dropping my kids off to go shopping. So that has gone away, and that's being taken over by Epic Games, correct?
Yeah, so, I used to work there when I was a teenager.
Wow, okay.
I went to high school at Apex High, and so we spent many of our teenage years wandering through that mall. I worked at the mall. It's one of my early young jobs. I think a lot of people have similar memories. And that mall has been around since the 1970s when it was, what was it called? Cary Village Mall, I think is what it was. Oh, I feel bad that I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I think it was that.
But it's been around a long time.
It has. And It is a place that, it used to have an arcade in the 80s called the Timeout Arcade. It had Brothers Pizza. It used to have this huge oak tree in the front of it, which is actually the tree that you see on some of the marketing materials. They have like a drawing outline of a tree, and it's this tree that got torn down or fell down some time ago. So there's just so much history and memories there, and it's been especially impactful, I think, because you've seen it get torn down piece by piece. I've driven past it a bunch, watching as it sat abandoned, watching as it was starting to get torn down, and kind of taking pictures along the way and keeping people updated on the state of the mall. It had the carousel, it had the train, and we watched as pieces were pulled from the mall. Some of these, I watched as they loaded the train up and dragged the train away from the mall. That's been, I think, it's not in Raleigh, but a lot of people who lived in Raleigh would have spent time
right.
at that
And how
mall.
much more modern can you get that it is now going to be the headquarters for gamers?
Yeah, it's so, and what I've read, again, according to the paperwork that has been submitted for the rezoning, they're hoping to put, obviously Epic Games is going to be there, but they're also hoping to have, it looks like a hotel, as well as some restaurant space, some shopping space. So
maybe a new day for that part of Cary.
And it's going to be, and it's right across from the Fenton too.
Right.
So there's a lot kind of
Positive
happening in that
change there.
area. Yeah.
So you've touched on this a little. Sometimes change doesn't sit well with everyone. Tell me a little bit about the debate over Seaboard Station. I know there's been a lot of discussions about the intersection between history and development there.
Yeah. So Seaboard Station is it's kind of an example of how history gets lost, right? Because I think a lot of people were pretty comfortable that Seaboard Station wasn't going to go anywhere because the station opened in the 1940s. It was a very important piece of Raleigh transportation history.
A train station.
Yeah, it was a train station, exactly. Right. You had people going to World War II on those trains, coming home from war on those trains, greeting loved ones. And it was just a very important piece of Raleigh history, even in the building today. It became eventually a garden supply shop, but they saved the building and the structure just really looked almost exactly the same externally. And they even saved like the overhang where people used to stand and wait for the trains. They saved, I guess they probably couldn't get rid of it. There's a stop block in the middle of the cafe. You wouldn't necessarily know what it is. It's a giant piece of concrete, but it was there for the trains to slam into so they wouldn't hit the building. So it's hard to get rid of it.
So what's happening now? That's been bought, and What are the new developers talking about? So
unfortunately, when it was bought, this was something that could have become a historic landmark, but never did. The organization that landmarks, historic landmarks, can't do anything unless the owners want to make it a landmark, and the owners never did. Because if it's a landmark, it's harder to sell, I suspect.
And you can't change anything.
Correct. Yeah, right. I'm sure that's part of it, too.
Right.
So, people make decisions to not landmark things, and it's understandable. But I think we got comfortable and that it would be saved. Then when developers came in and bought it, there was no reason to not just tear down the whole building. There's nothing protecting it. There was a group of people, Save Seaboard Station, that sort of stood up. They put together a group, and they put together a petition. Thousands of people signed the petition. People went to city council meetings and spoke up about this at a lot of the meetings. And what has essentially happened is city council did sort of take a step in to help protect the Seaboard Station building. The developers have 3 options that they can do. One is, I'm going to see if I can remember them off the top of my head. One is they have to save at least 50% of the historic structure. 2 is they have to move at least 50% of the historic structure
to
somewhere
another
else
location
where it can be safe. And then 3 is they have to simply document it as best they can, but they can tear it down if they document it. However, the punishment for that would be they can only build up to 7 stories instead of the 20 stories that they're hoping for.
So a couple of options there. Well, Heather, we could talk about this stuff all day long. This is fascinating to me. Again, I'm only been here since 1994, so 26 years, something like that. But this all resonates with me. So thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. Thank you for sharing all this information with us. And thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and making us part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email waiting in your inbox every morning with Triangle news, events, and headlines to get you ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.